You can do whatever you want. You can mess everybody up.
You know what?
You can, exactly. You don't want to mess up the system. Oh, no, where's that? And meeting display, talk to me. All right. So fine. All right. I'm not getting on here. What's going on, kids? Why can I not get on? I'm ready whenever you're ready.
And Mr. Dowdy, we're ready.
Good evening. Welcome to the District 225 Board of Education meeting. Madam Secretary, would you please read the roll?
Mr. Dowdy,
Here.
Mr. Glowacki, Ms. Mullenbeck,
Here.
Ms. Segwin,
Here.
Mr. Shine,
Present.
Dr. Steinberg.
Here.
Item 2 on our agenda is a motion to approve the agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Aye. Item 3 on our agenda is our recognition of community visitors. Do we have the page for tonight or not?
There are no community visitors this
Okay,
evening.
just want, as we always say, we welcome any community input we get, whether it's here or during the time between our meetings via phone calls or texts or emails. It's all always welcome. We very much appreciate that input. Our evening, I want to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight. We are now going into the fourth quarter, hopefully a refresh from spring break. We have our regular agenda night of community comment, which we've just done, board and superintendent reports and consent. And then we have 2 items on our regular agenda, our energy savings program for its first reading, as well as our Glenbrook North Student Support Reconfiguration Project, also first readings. Thank everyone for being here this evening. Item 4 on our agenda is our board and superintendent reports. Dr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Dowdy. I have just one, and then I'll hand it over to the principals to give a brief update on what's happening in the buildings. On April 2nd, as the next stage of our strategic planning process, the district reconvened members of the core planning team and the design team in a collaborative workshop. Members began the day in small groups reviewing input from the 1,375 responses to the survey that we administered back in March, seeking feedback about the 4 focus areas that had been developed in February. I've shared with the board those focus, actually, Ms. Smith has shared with you the different focus areas that have been developed. Overall, the feedback was very positive, with the majority of respondents indicating that they strongly agree or agree with the statements in each focus area. People who provided written feedback to the open-ended questions requested clarification on some statements and ideas for refinement. Last week, the members of the planning and design teams took the feedback into consideration as we more fully developed the strategic direction. The group also had a great conversation about the draft revised district values, mission, and vision statement that had been initially drafted very loosely in February. I was very pleased with the work of the larger team and was impressed with the way that they approached the day with thoughtfulness, respect, and desire to create a plan that will sustain the district over the next 3 to 5 years. Later this week, the district will receive updated versions of the focus areas that will once again be shared with the team for review. And then a formal plan, the first draft of the formal plan, will come to the board at our board meeting on May 13th. I want to thank all the members who participated in it. It was a long day. It was hard work, a lot of deep thinking, lots of conversation, very, very collaborative group in which we had students, staff, parents, administration all came together in this room for an extremely full day of discussing really the important parts of the future of this district. I'm very proud of their effort and really grateful for their efforts. So with that, I'll conclude and I'll turn it over to Dr. Georges, who will start on our building updates with a little bit about GBS.
Well, good evening. It's been a fun couple weeks at GBS. In fact, today was incredibly awesome. Students at Glenbrook South got to enjoy observing the solar eclipse today. Special thanks to Debbie Berlin and Jeff Rylander in our science department for organizing and supporting this opportunity for our students. In addition, I'd like to take a moment to thank the Glenbrook Foundation. They actually were the ones who provided the glasses for all of the GBS students through their generous support. Those glasses are required for students to be able to view safely. And we were very blessed. We had perfect weather, cloud-free skies, a great day for an incredible observation of an astronomical event. So it was great. Very nice. It was a fun day. It was good. The kids had a great time. In athletics, we've had a great start to the spring season. I'd just like to talk about our Lady Titans a little bit here. Our girls badminton team on the right has had a great start to the season. They beat Niles North and Maine South and placed second in the Prospect Invite this weekend. And on the left is our girls soccer team being silly and goofy, such a fun picture. They are doing so well. Our varsity team defeated a very strong Stevenson team 3-2. JV also beat Stevenson 5-0. And both teams faced off on Vernon Hills, resulting in a 4-0 victory for varsity and a 7-0 victory for JV. So great job for our ladies. Before we go to GBN, in activities, last Tuesday night was, for me, one of the most fun evenings of the year. It was our NHS induction evening. We had over 150 students at South who were inducted into the National Honor Society. What's great about National Honor Society, it's just a well-rounded recognition to our students, not just in the academic arena, but in service and other aspects of their athletic and extracurricular growth. In addition, we had a lovely reception afterwards that was hosted by the GBS Parents Association. So there was lots of cake and great music from our student musicians. And speaking of Parents Association, we then saw them all again on Thursday night for our spring Parents Association educational event. And they hosted a panel where a variety of current and alumni parents came to offer advice about life after college to our parents that are seniors right now. So what is it like once they're in college, and what are some of the special things that you did? Not necessarily all the academic advising, but the real stuff, like the mama bear, kind of things. So very well attended. The parents were very, very appreciative of the connection point and just being able to lean on other members of the community for this next stage for their students. And then finally, in academics, the Consulate General of Japan in Chicago awarded GBS student Eleni Kafentaris first prize for her speech, Believe in Myself, at their annual speech contest. So we're grateful to be able to offer the Japanese language here in the Glenbrooks, and we're very proud for Eleni with her achievement. And with that, over to GBN.
We wanted to congratulate for the 5th time the GBN math team as state champions. Many outstanding students on this team to congratulate. There is a whole host. I'm going to give you an idea of how many are on each team, but not name all of them. It would take us quite a while. And but our freshman team has 6 students on that team. Our sophomores have 7. There are 7 juniors and 6 seniors. In addition to those general numbers of students on the team, Oscar Lee at the freshman level was awarded state champion in freshman algebra. At the junior algebra 2 level, Danny Goldman. And then we had another set of freshman algebra team winning state championship with 6 members on the team. Seniors in pre-calc, 6 members on that team, and another 8-person freshman sophomore combination team were named as state champions as well. So it was quite a weekend for the math team. And we appreciate all the support they get in the Glenbrooks.
Very good. And please pass on to all students. We're very proud of their efforts and hope they continue. That's it. Mr.
Thank you
Dunn.
very much. It's great reports. Board members, anything on report tonight coming on? All right. Always good to hear all these. And it's the variety. There's so much variety. It's not always the same X and Y. And whether it's somebody giving a speech in a bridge with a consulate, or working with parents or math championships or whatever, it's always great to hear all that. So thank you for sharing very much. Item 5 on our agenda is our consent agenda. I think I see maybe one adjustment on the consent agenda.
We submitted an updated version of the personnel report, just simply because of the amount of administrative and other hiring that we're doing at this time of year.
Okay, fair enough. Ms. Romano, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, nothing to add. You do have hard copies in front of you, but we were able to upload the personnel report. So the information is available.
It's on post. That's great. Okay. Fair enough.
Jody, I just have one question.
Yes,
And this may
please.
be something that I've missed in the past, was just curious. There's one special category in here called special leave of absence. What is that exactly?
I believe it's the request when somebody either wants to take a leave or they want to have lower than 1.0, but Ms.
That's
Romano,
correct.
you're the expert in this.
That's correct. So when we do the staffing plan, there is an opportunity for staff members, certified staff members, teachers, and so forth, for them to put in time that they would be taking as a special leave request. So some of them could be a 0.2 instead of being a 1.0 employee. They would be a 0.8 or 0.6 depending on the needs that they have. It is approved at the building level just to make sure that we have the staffing that we need. And then it goes to the board for approval as well.
And how, I'm curious, like how long is the special leave of absence? Like,
It is for 1 year. Every year we send out communication for the contract.
Okay,
I don't think it's not actually a leave per se. It's really a reduction below 1.0 FTE is what I think you're referring
That's
to.
correct.
They're not like leaving they're actually just going to be here, but they work 4 days as opposed to 5 days or something
got it.
comparable to
Okay,
that.
that's what okay. Do we typically have that many? I just don't recall based on the other report.
We do. I believe it did increase a little bit this year, but yes, it's pretty common, the number of requests that we received on a yearly basis.
Oh, okay. And do you have a limit on what you can ask? Like how many are they allowed to do?
We do not have a limit. It goes along with the staffing needs at the building level. If if the staffing is struggling to find a specific position, let's say for a difficult to fill position, then at that point the building would say we are not able to approve this request. So it really depends on the needs that we have at the building level with our students and the sections that we can provide.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Just follow up. People, how do they get paid?
They get paid based on the FTE that they have available. So if someone requested a 0.2, they would be paid for a 0.8 FTE.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve consent agenda.
I second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none?
Mr. Doughty,
Yes.
Mr. Glowacki, I'm sorry, Ms. Mullenbeck,
Yes.
Mr. O'Hara, Ms. Segwin,
Yes.
Mr. Shine,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, we are moving to item 6 on our agenda, which are 2 regular agenda items. Our first agenda item is the Energy Savings Program. And I think Dr. Gravel, you're going to join us in a minute. We're on our first reading tonight, and I know the idea is to come back on consent if everybody's comfortable with this. I assume you're going to give us some introduction beyond all this, and I think Dr. Patak is as well. And then we can open it up to board discussion at that point. Dr. Johns.
Thank you, Mr. Doughty. As you mentioned, Dr. Gravel and Dr. Patak will give us an overview of the Guaranteed Energy Savings Contract Program, which is a combination of solar and battery technology in order to generate savings for the district and some sustainability effort as well. This is the first reading of the board, but there have been two readings at both the Finance Committee and at the Facilities Committee. Dr. Gravel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johns. The school district has been evaluating and investigating different types of renewable energy opportunities really for about the last 2+ years. We certainly have seen in just the general television advertising and different rebates that have been approved by the state of Illinois and also the federal government, that there are opportunities and incentives to maximize your resources and maximize your utilization of renewable energy wherever possible. And a lot of these rebates and different credits that incentivize and support the overall build out costs that are inevitable with these solutions really weren't accessible to governmental entities such as school districts until just recently. And so at the beginning of the fall, Dr. Patak and I started working informally with a variety of different organizations that develop solutions such as these to support commercial, industrial, and governmental agencies. Maximize their resources and decrease their recurring electrical costs. And what we found was that there were some unique solutions that candidly, no other school district in Illinois had yet evaluated. There are certainly a large amount of school districts that have evaluated and implemented solar panel arrays. So sometimes we see solar panels when you have a lot of property. You might have what are referred to as solar panel farms, where in multiple acres, you just have panels lined and facing in different directions, ultimately contributing to a power collection tool that decreases the amount of power you need from the grid for your larger buildings. Other installations, much more common around here, such as those installed in Grays Lake and Highland Park Deerfield at New Trier, and actually even on the roof of our pool, for example, right across at Glenbrook South, those are roof-based solar panels. The challenge oftentimes that you run into is you can't put solar panels everywhere. You need a roof that supports it. You need to make sure that as you're putting these panels on, that your roofs are aged at a level where you're not going to be placing them and then needing to remove them 2 years later as you do a full replacement and so on and so forth. And so as we evaluated different aspects and acknowledged that we don't have a lot of land that we can do a solar farm, we found that the average payback for these types of installations, and we'll just be very conservative from a financial standpoint, was about 15 years. That's kind of the nitty gritty of even though there's rebates that are out there, you go ahead and you make a large capital purchase and you ultimately pay that fully back over about 15 years. We have seen some installations where that number gets kind of notched down a little bit to 12 years, but still a long time. And again, a long time that ultimately leads to paying off that capital investment, ultimately reducing the amount of grid power that you're dependent on. The challenge though, however, when you have a 15-year payback is that's also right about the time you have to replace the panels again. And so you do get your resources back in theory, but it's just a long cycle that you then start again. As we evaluated other options, we actually traveled down the street to one of our local Glenview vendors, APT, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And APT had investigated, again, renewable energy solutions, such as those that we evaluated, that included a combination of solar panels, but they also traveled into the realm of having larger scale batteries. And while that might sound a little odd, it's actually a strategy that has been used in the southern part of the state, just a little differently with buses that are housed in electric school buses. Forgive me, batteries that are housed in electric school buses. APT's installation has a combination of solar panels on the roofs of their facility. And then they also have a larger battery that's located outside of their building. And what it does is it charges when power is cheap from the grid. So even though there's solar panels involved, the solar panels are not actually powering the battery. The incorporation of solar panels is based on maximizing your rebates and the structure of your energy proposal. So it's kind of a qualifying element. But the battery charges at the early hours in the morning, again, when power and demand, or when demand is low and power is cheaper. And then that power is given back to the grid when power and demand is more expensive and when demand is high. And by kind of becoming a partner to Commonwealth Edison and all of the electrical companies that are out there, there's a variety of incentives. And it's something that we may not think about it, but there's a lot of demand for electricity, and power companies and also regional power kind of distribution hubs, they rely on solutions such as batteries located in Glenview in Northbrook, Illinois, to ultimately feed the grid when demand is high. When we looked at this combined solution, we go from a payback of 15 years or 12 years if you're having a very aggressive proposal. We're able to drop down that capital investment conservatively to about 5 years. So you have, again, a capital outlay. You expend all those funds, and then through federal, state rebates, as well as decrease on electrical bills, you pay that back in about 5 years. But what happens then if your battery and your solar panels still have value for about another 10 years? And the answer is something that's very unique and novel, which traveled us down or encouraged us to travel down this path. And that is that the power companies are still interested in having you charge up your battery, having you deplete the battery and sell back to them, that our school district has the opportunity to generate conservatively about $750,000 each year after all of our investment is paid back. And here's where this translates into a much larger reality, which is really important as the school district is engaged in our strategic planning process, and the reality that we just have finished the first phase of our facility master planning effort. That facility master planning effort tells us we have amazing facilities, but in order to maintain and continue to enhance our facilities at the rate that we've been going, there's going to be an annual cost of $6 to $7 million a year. And so when we hear that there's an opportunity to generate $750,000 each year of revenue, and when we're only spending about $3 to $5 million a year right now on capital projects, and we're going to have to spend closer to $7 million, that's very intriguing from maximizing the financial resources of the district to ultimately maintain and enhance our facilities through a new revenue line. And candidly, in schools, we really don't hear about new revenue lines coming up really at all. We've been fortunate, we've been blessed by having some access to federal funds through different COVID-related initiatives, but the reality is those funds are exhausted. And so the only funds that our district has to support facility projects are those that come from our general revenue lines that exist today. And so as we've traveled down this route, we learned about this solution, and we did so, as I said, informally. We visited it. We asked probably a good few hundred or 1,000 questions. We did site visits not only with APT, but also with other school districts that have these solutions. And we tried to learn and build our own knowledge base as much as we could because we haven't traveled down this route. And once we had enough knowledge, we worked with our legal counsel and also our architects and construction manager to go out for a proposal. Now, in the state of Illinois, there's very few times when you don't have to be so specific about what it is that you're looking for in responses from construction trades and solution providers. And one of those exceptions is referred to as guaranteed energy savings contracts. And here's how it works. You put out a request for proposal and you identify different parameters. One of the parameters we just put right out there is that we weren't looking for a solution that would ultimately provide guaranteed energy savings over 15 years or 10 years. We put right in the proposal, we're looking for a solution that has a payback of 5 years. And we put that out there to make sure that as individuals were considering responding to it, they knew that we're aware that many are 10 to 15 year payback, and we're not interested in that. That's too long for an ROI because we know that there's a solution that can do it much quicker. And so in response to that RFP, which was published in the newspaper, placed into a state database, And also individuals who were interested in responding reached out, had a large amount of conversations with Dr. Patak and other members of the district staff. We received one response, and it is from the same provider that supported app down the street. And interesting highlight, not only did they support app's first installation, but they're also working with them to finalize the installation of a second battery solar solution. And from there, we received a proposal with a variety of details and things of that nature. Through this process, to make sure it wasn't just Mr. Murdy, Dr. Patak, myself, Mr. Wright, Ms. Bonner, instead of just having us review it, we brought together a combined facility and finance committee meeting. So I'm kind of giving the whole summary of what many of you sat through and experienced. And we got a variety of other questions. Just kind of curiosities, interest in gathering more information about certain topics. And we brought all those questions together. We synthesized them. We worked with the responder to the RFP and brought forth those answers through a second. This wasn't a combined. We did a facilities committee and a finance committee in March and provided that information again. And one of the important takeaways that we had from that information gathering process was, for lack of a better term, the answer to the question, is this for real? Is this too good to be true? That's a very realistic question. Because at the end of the day, the capital investment, the initial outlay of the school district is approximately $10 million. And those resources would come from the school district's fund balance, which we rely upon to ultimately fund the day-to-day of our operations as we have revenue flows. And to make sure, since we don't traditionally go down this route of a capital investment with an ROI on it, we engaged our external auditors, Lauterbach and Amen. We said, this is the proposal we received. Here are all of the federal and state and power company related incentives that we are being told we're eligible for. Candidly, please vet every single one of them. Please validate that they're accessible and identify the steps that we need to go through in order to claim them. And they did just that. They validated that these are in fact accessible incentives, that the solution does meet the different requirements, and that school districts, not just organizations or companies, school districts are eligible for them. They did, however, address another topic that the finance and facility committee members brought up, which is in today's challenging environment that we experience from an economic standpoint, by the time we apply for these credits, because you do have to have the solution in place before you can apply, are we actually going to get them? And so we traveled down that path again. And what we found was that there really are no concerns about the state of Illinois incentives that are out there. Some of them are long-term incentives. And in fact, some of the different incentives that are out there are even increasing. We went with very conservative numbers, but depending on how the actual items are developed, if it's based in the US, if it's partially US built, we can see a differential of 10% more revenue, which is an intriguing proposition. So not only are they accessible, but the ones in Illinois should be firm. There's also a belief that the federal rebates and incentives that are available today will continue to be available. But there is a challenge. As with anything, we can't guarantee, right, that every rebate will be available. But what we can tell you is we have a lot of experience applying for these types of rebates. And in our school district, the only time when the school district maximized a federal program and did not get the full amount was actually related to the school district's referendum debt, when the school district benefited or applied for and utilized what's referred to as Build America bonds. And unfortunately at the time, well, shortly thereafter, Congress had a process known as sequestration, which ultimately led to a decrease in the governmental contribution to what were taxable bonds. It didn't mean we lost all the incentives. It meant that we lost part of the incentive. So that's really the only time I can refer to in my time and in Ms. Tarver's time, our Director of Business, where we've had an issue where a grant that we were eligible for, that we applied for, didn't fully pay out. Another unique element of a lot of these grants, and you see it within the tables in the chart, forgive me, the tables in the memo, they pay out pretty quickly. You install your solution, for lack of better terms, it's turned on and functioning, and you become eligible to get a large amount of your capital investment repaid through those rebates and incentives. Other incentives certainly are ongoing as you are selling power to the grid and it's being bought, as you are benefiting from decreasing your utilization of grid power through the solar arrays, and so on and so forth. And so today, we're here to talk, instead of just to the Finance Committee individually and the Facilities Committee individually, we're here to talk and respond to any questions that the full board might have. I will share that at the Facility and Finance Committee, both committees recommended moving forward to the full board for consideration. We've had a bit of time since we last gathered with spring break and things of that nature. So Dr. Patak and I are here to answer any questions that might help inform the discussion. I will offer just one last element that we hadn't talked about at the committee meeting, which was very simply, if we are spending $10 million on a solution, what does that do to our potential earnings through investing those funds? Certainly, as many of you likely know right now, we have a higher interest rate environment, and the school district's average interest rate is about 5% right now. We do anticipate that interest rates are going to be declining over the next few years as the Fed continues to do what the Fed does. And so we did a calculation where we made an assumption of 5% for 5% interest for our first year of implementation, 4.5 for the second year of implementation, and 3.5 for the third year of implementation. We only use 3 years because we anticipate the overwhelming amount of the investment to be paid back within 3. We also know that there's a lot that will be paid in year 1, and so there's going to be a balancing. And if we assume that no money is paid back at all until the end of year 3, the school district potentially, again, using very conservative figures, the school district could potentially be losing out on $1.3 million in interest earnings. But that's making a lot of assumptions. Assumption 1, in your first year of implementation, you don't receive any revenue, or in year 2, or in year 3. Another thing is, the school district never pays out a contract like this all at once. We make progressive payments. So as one part of the project is done, it's paid for after evidence and all of the certified payroll is received and things of that nature. The other element is we are using 5%, 4.5, and 3.5%. If we look at different trends and modeling, a lot of bond rating agencies are assuming interest rates might be much closer to 1.5%, 2% at that time. So just kind of acknowledging that those are some of the things. But that is a compounding interest, simple interest model that we calculated. And so I just wanted to share that because that was one question that had come up. With that, I will turn back to Dr. Johns if he had anything else to add. Otherwise, Dr. Patak and I are here to answer any questions.
So Dr. Johns, would you like to add anything?
I have nothing to add, but I'm sure there's some questions at the table.
So first of all, thank you for the presentation and thank you for the really thorough memo and all the work. And I want to just start that, and I'm the odd person out here because I haven't been part of these committee meetings, but this has been tremendous work by our administration, tremendous work by our committees. This is really how our committee structure is supposed to work, because this is a huge project. And we want to make sure that it gets vetted very carefully in a lot of the minutiae. So thank you to the committees. I know, Mr. Shine, I just want to point out, I know you've been particularly heavily involved with this, and particularly appreciate all of your efforts and in doing this. From my perspective as a new person on looking at it the first time in a meeting, heard about this, obviously. This has lots of great potential economically, sustainability wise, even there's a curricular angle. So all these things are extremely attractive. And we had a great memo for this. I want to make sure that in the next 3 weeks, if we're trying to head toward consent, that there are certain things I want to add to the memo. Like, for instance, you just mentioned about the potential offset on earnings. I want to make sure that this memo is tied together. It's already got lots of good stuff, and I'm sure you have thousands of pages behind it and work papers. So I'm going to ask some questions after I open up the rest of the table first. And it's all meant just to make this as a robust presentation so that we pick it up and understand it, not just today or tomorrow, but 3 years from now, somebody else picks up and says, oh, this is why the board felt this was proper diligence. And you've done an enormous amount, and the committees have, and that's great. So that when I get to my questions and thoughts, I'm guessing you're going to have answers to 99% of them, which is fantastic. I just want to have it added to the memo so the whole package is there for people. I really appreciate that. Before I go there, though, I want to ask the board members, because all of you have been heavily involved. Are you anything you want to add at this point? And we had a great presentation, a great memo. Anything else you want to put in at this point? Questions?
I just had one question. I think one of my questions at the meeting was who is going to review all the contracts just to make sure that the terms and everything is accurate. It looks like, is Nicholas and Associates going to help with that? Is that I saw in the memo?
Yes, so Nicholas and Associates, they're our typical construction manager. So when we put projects out to bid, Nicholas plays a very heavy role in that, where they get our cost estimates up front, they do the scopes of work, they oversee every single contractor involved in the project, and they, from start to finish, they're our person. For this, since it's a performance contract or a guaranteed energy savings contract, it's handled a little bit differently, where this company, Convergence Energy, they are getting paid their fee of 9.5 million. And with that, they're doing all the design, they're doing all the procurement. We're paying them, and they're overseeing all the subs. So they're basically project managing. But Nicholas and Associates, they'll be serving as our owner's rep on this project. And so we'll be paying them based on time and material of a fee not to exceed 50,000. And so their role will be helping us with the contract review. They'll be reviewing all the payments. So they'll be making sure that Convergence is paying their subs. There aren't any lien waivers involved. They'll be auditing all of the payroll records, because we have to be paying prevailing wages. So they'll be handling all of that. They'll also, throughout the construction phase of the project, they'll be stopping by and again, serving as owner's rep. So they'll be making sure the concrete's poured correctly. They'll be reviewing the job submittals, and they'll just be an extra set of eyes on the whole project for us.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions or comments, thoughts? Dr. Steinberg?
Just 2 comments. Number one is, I was just remembering how when we do the annual reports, the fiscal balance and everything, you do a great job. The team does a great job on the bonds, where we keep track how we're doing, when we're going to run out of debt, and we positively run out of debt and on these things. I wonder if we can do the same with this, because it's going to be a large expense. So maybe every year we figure out, how are we doing with that? What have we saved with energy expenses? Yeah, we lost a little bit on revenue, but everything else came okay. One table, something that could keep people, again, for sometimes somebody.
That's one of the things on my piece of paper, monitoring. Yes,
There we go,
absolutely.
great mind things. All right. The second thing is not related to this, and you don't have to answer now, but as you pointed out, rates of interest are going to go down. So we've been used to having a nice extra cash coming from investments that we allocated for certain expenses on the annual budget. And that number, regardless of whether we do this project or not, that number is going to go down. And as I said, I don't need that answer today, but at some point I would like to hear how we forecasting or how we planning for this, because this is part of our annual budget as well. So, but I don't need.
We've gone from the 1 basis point environment to 5%. It's a big change, so it's all good.
Slightly.
Just a bit. Any other, Mr. Shine?
Well, we lived through the 0 rate environment, and coming from a time when it was a 5, 6 plus environment, and we lost all of that interest revenue. I guess my one comment is to really commend Kim and Dr. Gravel, because I think what they've done is taken a commercial market product and I think created a model that is going to work for other schools. Because this is kind of a hybrid thing. I mean, performance contracting's been around for a long time, but this is like a variation on the theme. And I suspect they will be hearing from a lot of other school districts because they've done all the heavy lifting here to kind of package it and organize it into a model. And one of the things that I really find comfort in is that the third party, and I don't know if it was an accounting firm or who went through all of the various rebates. And when I look at this, I know we're going to get the vast majority of this. I think you have your like your tails in your middle of a distribution. The stuff over here is not going to happen. It is simply not going to happen because some of these are simply in force of law. They're in statute for utilities. They don't have a choice. They may not want to pay them, but they're going to pay them because they're just in the rate structure. So worst case is never going to happen. So when you look at this, you kind of have to there's a math simulation way of doing this. And the same thing with this, kind of this offset for interest. There's no way you're going to end up at the very end of the worst case. So as Marcelo pointed out, we face a loss of revenue anyway, even if it was just sitting in the bank. But I think you guys have really done an excellent job, and the memo just kind of lays it all out there, as clear as I believe it is possible. All these different iterations that the team has gone through. You guys, I think, have just done a bang up job on this, and you're really to be commended because it's a huge project. It's a big number, and typically we don't see numbers like this unless we're putting like an addition on or knocking out major numbers of classrooms. So this is good, and it's nice to know that we are being more green and that there's an educational component in here. And I think that will grow because there's a lot of pieces in here. Education, I mean, there's the business side, there's the energy side, there's there's chemical stuff here and batteries, and there's physics and just all kinds of things that can be brought if the staff has the kind of bring it up slowly. But I'm really impressed with what you guys did.
Excellent. Ms. Mullenbeck, anything?
I think I'll echo a little bit what Skip had to say, but I think it was funny what you said, Dr. Gravel, about when we first presented this. It was, I think everyone kind of was like, except for maybe Mr. Shine, because you knew more about it. But we were like, really? You can do that? This is going to work? And I do think that with the different committees' work and the different iterations, having you come back and explain more and flesh things out, I at least, and I think most of us have, feel very comfortable that this has been thoroughly vetted, that the due diligence has been done. And while it is a large number, it seems like it's also, a great opportunity, not just, financially, which is terrific, obviously, but, in the curricular aspects. And I do think that it will serve as a model for other schools. And, everyone, to the extent that schools can find a revenue stream, I think we should be, searching for those. So, kudos to you for everything that you've done in being very creative about coming up with something new and innovative.
Terrific. Any other questions or comments at this point? Because I do have some and this is really just to maybe add a few things to the memo more than anything else. I think there's going to be, my guess, having gone through thousands of questions, if I heard you before, that you've probably vetted almost all of these things. But I'm going to just go this, and just to tell you, I think I said this to you earlier today, I'll send you this little list I have, and that way you don't have to take copious notes. You can answer now or just, but just want to make sure. On the first page near the bottom, we've used the phrase, a it says provide a financial savings guarantee that the energy services company is doing that. Does that mean we're guaranteeing the 9.5 million and they're going to do all the work? Or are they actually guaranteeing that we're going to get it paid off in 5 years and we're going to get the stream for 10 years? I love the latter. I can't imagine they'd agree to it, but what the heck?
No, so one of the state of Illinois rules or laws with a guaranteed energy savings contract is that the energy provider will guarantee that it will be paid back within 20 years. And so that's where their guarantee will be, because that's what the
Okay.
law says they need to say. But in reality, the financial model they've provided is a 5-year, but the guarantee is only on 20.
So it's the 20, but that's the guarantee that you're going to get the 9.5 million, not that we're going to get the stream of whatever, 7 million more over 10 years.
Correct. It
So-
would be on the 9.5 million.
So I would just suggest there, add a sentence or just a clarification. It's just simple. There's nothing wrong with guarantee of any sort, but I just wanted to know what it was. And then I'm going to turn you to page 3 on, I think it's your first table. And the first, that's a 2-point, I lied. I think it's the third, let's see, second one, third is page 3. And the first one is a financial investment tax credit for 2.8 million and change. And just, this is just, we use the word credit, but then we use the infinitive to deduct. And so at least in the world of taxes, credits and deductions are very different. Deductions are great, but credits are awesome. And I didn't know whether you're actually gonna get a check for 2.8 million or you're gonna get some sort of deduction on some sort of government filing. And that's, I'm not trying to be picky as an English point. This is a serious financial point. So whatever the answer is, we should just, if it's really mean credit, great. But if not, we should just clarify what that means.
Yeah, and I think what's different, and we talked about this a little bit at the committee,
Great.
in a commercial environment, they might very well get an offset or a deduction.
That's what I'm saying.
We
Right.
as a governmental entity will receive a rebate in the form of a disbursement,
Terrific.
but we'll clarify the.
We would just
term.
make sure the language is clear so that, again, I'm thinking about the person picking this up in a year, because this is a big expenditure. I mean, it's 10% of our fund. And so it's, I mean, we've gotten comfortable. It takes a little while to get there. So we've just, this is a smaller point. For all 3 tables on pages 3 through 5, which have some footnote that says what our sourcing is for the information we're using. I'm guessing the verification of all this is from Boughton, Lauder, Bach, and Amen. But let's just make the verification, the sourcing clear. It could be 1 footnote, or maybe it's 3 footnotes, so that people know where we're getting the information. I don't doubt it, but again, it's the person picking this up in a couple of years to say, this is what you guys did. We all know you're tremendously thorough and we appreciate it, but it's just a small thing. Next point, clarifying the path of the funds. When we get $2.8 million, the credit, does it go straight back into the fund, into the reserves? Where does it go? And the reason I ask that, because it goes to interest earnings to offset that stream. And we should just clarify that path. I don't know how it works, but this may take a sentence.
No, so it's an accounting entry.
Okay,
Ultimately, upon approval of the board, there will be a resolution that formally reserves or restricts a portion of the fund balance. We will then likely perform an accounting equation that puts it into a prepaid expense that gets a net effect. We can describe the accounting equation.
okay, we can just clarify. Again, most of these I think are a sentence or 2, but just to be clear that we're putting the money back. The whole point here, and this is because you guys are more inside baseball than I am on this, but I'm more like the person who's gonna pick this up in 3 years. So it's these little teeny points. In the cash flow, and I know, Dr. Gravel, you started explaining this, which I appreciate, the offsets and guessing on interest rates, just the way we're guessing on energy rates. We can't guarantee what energy rates are. We have no idea if we're gonna have a flood of solar in 6 years. We have no idea. We have to go on with our best information. I think instead of saying that we have these rebates coming back in the first 1 to 5 years, I would like that spelled out a little bit more, because the question you're trying to answer with the interest loss, whatever the rate we set at as a guesstimate, is when did the funds go out and when did the other ones come in? I got the sense when you said a few minutes ago that the timing might be only a couple of months. That's fantastic. Not all is the experience of people with government work. So if there's some way in the memo, we can, not to get lost in detail, but just say, in year 1, we expect this kind of money out the door. We expect this money back in. You can caveat it with, you can't predict exactly, but at least you get a better sense of that's the main event for those first 5 years to get the money paid back.
Yeah, we'll add a table to reflect the interest calculation.
Right.
We'll add a table that reflects years 1 through 5 specific
Yeah.
to expenditures, revenue, potential in or known or anticipated interest loss.
Because my, my concern is if you said if you waited 4 or 5 years, you could end up having 1 or 2 million, or even 2 million, and then you're talking extending the payback really a couple of years. So we just want to make sure that we understand that that's not a reason not to do this. It's just to be realistic. I'm sorry.
As you were saying this, I'm thinking this a little bit differently. So somebody offers us an investment. Let's forget about this thing about it. Says, invest $10 million and we'll give you rebates. We'll give you 7.5 almost right away. And then you will ask, what's my return of investment, right? So there's a revenue side that has nothing to do with the rebates, which is what we get every year. That could be put into an interest rate. So we are losing interest on one side,
Yeah, right.
but we are earning interest on the other side, with the advantage that our capital investment is decreasing on top of us getting revenue.
Totally get all that.
So this could be put, as you are asking, to put on the table, what side of interest we are losing. There's a side of interest that we are earning, that is the revenue proportional to the investment.
But and my only point is the timing point. I
Yeah.
totally get that. It's just, it's
To show how
intuitive.
the net change.
Just show the net changes, your point's right on. It's just, it may add 6 months for all I know, best guess. I don't know. It may add nothing. It may, I don't know what, but I just want to paint that picture because that's the thing that jumps out of, okay, what are we losing? What is the opportunity cost on that $10 million? Okay. And then let's see. In terms of on page 3, we talk about the subsidy and you keep using the word conservative, Dr. Bell, which I appreciate. I would just ask 2 things. Why do we think it's conservative? And what do we base that on? Because everyone likes to hear assumptions are conservative, and I don't doubt that's sincere, but we need something that says, why do we think this is conservative? And then secondly, why we have some things at 100%, as Mr. Shine points out, which is fine on certain things that are built in like into an RTO like PJM, or things you're not as sure about because an administration can change and so forth. When we're building that out, why is 85% conservative on the multi-year ones? That may be entirely true. It may be conservative. We just need to have a sentence or two at least to say, what's the basis for that? Because ultimately, when we're thinking about the return on this, we could think 100% return, we're going to get 100%, but maybe for some of it, it's supposed to be 85%. Maybe that's built into the model. I wasn't clear, but when you're modeling that, we face a lawsuit for $1 million and we think it's a 50% chance of winning or losing, we may value that at $500,000 because we just do a simple offset of the percentage. That's a simplified point, but what I'm trying to get at is that when we're presenting again the economics of this may add a sentence or two. Not trying to upset apple carts here. It's just making sure the analysis is refined just a little bit like that. Because the subsidies, these rebates are great, but the whole sense is how much can we count on them? And I know that they're accessible according to our auditors, wonderful, but we want to make sure that we're accounting for the risk that some of them may go away for one reason or another. Like we know that in 2025, certain things in the tax code are going to change, they're going to switch back generally in our tax code from I think that's a 2017 act for that. So we just want to be clear on that. Last couple of things on the financial. On Lautenberg, get this right, Lauterbach and Amen. Are we treating that like an opinion letter, the way you do when you do a merger and acquisition? We feel like we can go to the bank on this because when they sign an audit, they're putting their names on the line. Is it at that level or is it more of an informal memo? Because again, usually when people do deals, they want opinion letters from accountants, from auditors, from lawyers on various aspects. I'm just curious what level of protection we have from this. That they've been a good outfit for us. I'm not disparaging them particularly. I just wonder what the level of confirmation we got.
We worked on a time and materials basis for an evaluation, so we didn't seek a formal opinion letter. It was T&M going through each rebate and then providing to us an assertion of what they found.
Okay. I guess the other thing I'm going to put in conjunction with that, and it sounds like you work with legal on some of the contracting side, and I don't know if this is Mr. Petrarca or others, but typically we have our lawyers look at this kind of deal, almost any deal I've ever been involved in my career. And if we've done it, great, but I would like to have some sort of opinion on that. This is not the only thing ask we may not have done, where we'd say, we've looked at this, we think the risks of government contracting, viewpoint escape clauses, changes in administration, accessibility of funds from a legal perspective, we believe that those are correct. The auditors have their perspective, which is very valuable, but lawyers have a different perspective and they both have value. And I don't mean, if you run it through Mr. Petrarca or somebody else, great. If not, I think we need to have that kind of analysis done. So I think that's the only ad in my list. I'm almost done.
So we, just to clarify, there are two Mr. Petrarcas that we work with.
Oh, that's right.
At
Okay.
different firms.
Fair enough.
All of our contracts run through Mr. Chris Petrarca.
Uh-huh.
And that's all of our construction projects. And because we have, at least in my time, have not done a guaranteed energy savings contract, we have engaged with them to review everything from the initial newspaper posting to the RFP to clarifying things. We needed to issue an amendment to the RFP to clarify different deadlines. So all of that is run through them. The next step would be reviewing the contracts. We don't enter into the contract phase until the board issues their approval, and then we engage in contract. So the motion ultimately and the action is to approve the administration to work to enter into a contract not to exceed X, Y, and Z. But that will all go through that process.
That's all great.
Which is what we-
All the preliminary stuff you just described, I don't know if that's in emails or in letters, but it'd be good just to capture that in one place, the way our auditors have done that. It sounds like something they've already done. They just need to, again, it's the package of diligence, and maybe my background is in legal deals and even in energy deals. I have some of that as well. And so that's just usually what you see. And it's such a huge amount of money. We want to have that tacked down. It sounds like it's going to be easy. He's done it, which is fantastic. Last couple of things. On terms of convergence, it sounds as if apt used them. Have we done diligence on them as a company? Here's the nightmare scenario is they, for some reason, are into financial trouble. Are there other suppliers out there who can fill maintenance gaps if these guys put it up, but they're not there? Have we thought that through?
So part of it will be the typical performance bond that we'll require of them. So in the event there was bankruptcy, which is something that did occur, years ago with one of our electrical contractors, then we would be able to go through that course through the performance bond.
Okay. And then, and that's great. And in conjunction with that, though, if we have the system up and running, and are there other suppliers who could fill maintenance roles? I know we only had one response on the RFP, but that may have been the nature of the RFP. So my question is, is there enough of a market out there so that we can find alternative maintenance companies to do these sorts of things?
I would suggest that convergence is providing the proposal and leveraging a variety of partners to support the proposal.
Okay.
So I would argue yes.
All right. Okay. That's good. I just want to make sure we've done diligence on the company is really where I'm coming on that. Last thing, continue on the financial, other than the monitoring, which Dr. Steinberg already raised, is contingency planning. Even though we don't think it, only half the rebates come through for whatever reason. Does that just extend out the payback period? Is that, or do we have any kind of contingency plans for that?
It extends back the payback period.
Okay. All right. Last two quick topics. One, safety risks. We talk about fire.
Mhm.
Are there other ones like vandalism or other things we need to be worried about? I ask completely out of ignorance. Are these things dangerous if somebody vandalizes them, jumps over the fence, that kind of, I'm just asking, have we thought about that?
You want me to answer?
Sure.
So in terms of the fires, which you brought up, so the ROE in the village, they'll be reviewing everything,
Yep.
permitting everything. We can look more into the vandalism piece, but it's not something.
Well, maybe
that
that's the
has
wrong,
come
maybe
up.
it's the wrong, is somebody breaking in for whatever reason, kids being, kids, I'm just stereotyping, but my point is, are there safety risks beyond fire, which is serious, of course, and it sounds like we're going to handle that. Great. Are there other safety risks? Don't focus on vandalism, just any safety risk.
All of the equipment is in locked metal
Okay,
cabinets.
all right, that helps.
So to that extent, I mean, we had kids get up on the roof and start a cooling tower on fire. You would normally not have thought of that as being a high risk
Yeah,
piece of
no, I hear
exposed
you.
equipment.
I'm asking out of ignorance. If we're comfortable with it,
but-
that's good.
You-
I didn't know, I just didn't know if we
I
had thought
don't,
through.
I would state categorically that there is no way to eliminate all risk.
Sure.
Either mechanical, fire, or financial.
What's reasonable? is the question. Yeah.
Anything that you're doing has some level of risk.
Mhm. Okay.
It's just, it is life.
No, I hear that.
And it seems that it would be difficult for anybody to guarantee with 100% certainty
No, looking for that.
the entire list of rebates. So you put yourself on the other side of the table and you have things out of your control, would you bet your business and your good name? No, you would use words like highly probable, likely.
Yeah, that's right. No, I'm fine with that. I'm
Right.
fine. I just want to make sure, is there something we should be doing? I'm asking again, complete ignorance on safety. If we think it's just fires the main one, that's great. That's all I just want to know. Okay. And then just the last thing, I think you've answered this in terms of opportunity costs for other facilities project. I know you have the long-term plans. Is there any concern that by tying up, so to speak, $10 million, that we're not going to have funds available to do things when we want to do them? I think not, because the reserve is so big, but just, we thought that through.
Yeah, and you know, size of a fund balance is always a point of a lot of emotion and opinion. We utilize our treasurer's report, which we now are providing each month, as an illustration to identify what our cash flow looks like. And we've also worked with our treasurer, Vicki Tarver, who's also our director of business, to evaluate, and we believe that the 10 million mark will not negatively impact, for lack of better terms, paying our bills on a payday to payday basis, given the fact that our revenue comes in some different chunks that sometimes is delayed. If we were to go well beyond that, we start to experience some concerns.
Okay.
With the 3-year payback upon implementation, it's a healthy risk that we feel is fiscally prudent, given the alternatives, since school districts are going to need to seek additional revenues at some point.
I think if it's not in here, a sentence or two along those lines, the bigger picture. Again, you guys have thought through this for years so incredibly well. And that's really the vast majority of what I'm asking here is like a sentence or two or a couple of words. I don't think it's going to take much, but if we could, so what my hope is that we can, that with theory, we can make whatever clarifications need to be made and get whatever, getting Chris Pacharka to just get things together into a single place, then we'll be ready to go on the 29th with consent. But if we can get a memo together before that and we can see it, that'd be fantastic. So, but again, I just want to echo what I said at the beginning and echo what Mr. Shine said and others. This is an enormous effort. We never lose sight of the fact of what you're doing. It's so good. We get used to it, but we never take it for granted. So thank you for all these efforts on this and look forward to it. Board members, any other questions or comments at this point?
One point.
Please, Dr. Steinberg.
Also looking from a different side, I agree with you. Nothing is guaranteed. We hope that we're gonna get the rebates back. And I agree with Skip that we may get them all, we may get half. Worst case scenario is unlikely. But if you want to add another point to look at it on a positive spin, right? So we put $10 million and the estimated revenue is 600K, 660. So it's a 6.6%, right? Suppose we're not going to get the 10 million, at most we're going to get 7.5, and the rest we're going to be paying through the interest. Suppose the cost of investment ends up being 5%, 5 million instead of 10. For whatever reason, nothing works out, we only get 2.5. That means that we're getting 24%, we're getting 12% of interest fixed on $5 million. What any other investment of the reserve will give us 12% a year in perpetuity? True, you don't get your capital back, but you get we always going to have money on reserves.
Of course. Yeah.
So it's like diversifying, it's getting a piece of the money. Just to be clear, I want us to get all the money back, but I'm saying in the worst case scenario, what we can say is, hey, we made a bad investment that is giving us 12% a year, which will probably beat any other good investment that we can make with money on reserves. Yeah. It would be a case if we don't have any money on reserves. Like if we have millions in reserves and somebody comes and says, conservatively, take 10% of that reserve or 8% of that reserve and put it in this weird business, whatever, that's going to give you 12% a year. We probably will consider.
No, I don't think school funds can go into hedge funds or anything like that. So we got those little regulations.
That
like
happened,
that.
yeah, 2008 or something.
There you go. There you go. Okay. Any other comments or questions, folks? All right. Okay. Thank you both again very much. And great work. So we're going to move to item 6.2, which is the last point of our regular agenda. It's the Glenbrook North Student Support Reconfiguration Project. Dr. Johnson.
Thank you. This is a project that we've had in discussion amongst administration, particularly at GBN, for the past 5 years. It's a conceptualization of providing critical student support, really using a team-based approach that has grown steadily at GBN. It's an approach that has been used quite successfully at GBS, largely and importantly because of the proximity of both the dean's office and the student support offices. Unfortunately, GBN does not have the layout that is consistent with GBS and a lot of other districts, in which a critical incident that may occur in the dean's office is able to be given additional support from the student services department at a really critical time. And so this particular year, we have some financial situation that makes this an opportunity for us to take advantage of those resources that we have available. We also have a change of administration that makes this timely. And as we're seeing emerging throughout our strategic planning process, there's a great emphasis on providing comprehensive, broad spectrum support for students. And so it is a project that we're bringing forward now. I think we saw both opportunity, but also some urgency emerge just simply from some of the change that we have going on at North, positive change. So we thought it was important to bring it forward. So Dr. Patak is going to walk us through this model. This project has been brought just one time, but to both finance and facilities, if I recall. Dr. Patak, go ahead.
Yes, as Dr. John says, this is a project we talked about at both the facility committee meeting and also the finance committee meeting, and both committees supported bringing it forward to the full board. The project involves some office reconfiguration work at Glenbrook North. The goal of the project is to align our office spaces with the recent staffing reorganization that the district just went through. It also, as Dr. John said, it allows us to mirror a model we have at Glenbrook South, which is working really well. Right now, if you can picture it, the dean's office at Glenbrook North, it's right off of the main lobby. So as soon as you come into the building, there's the dean's office and the attendance office. So the one issue with that is it's fairly far away from the people the deans work with the most when it comes to supporting our students. So they're far away from the student services area, which are our counselors, psychologists, social workers. So the goal of the project is to move our main office, which houses the principal, the 3 associate principals, and the clerical staff. So those folks would relocate from the main office into the dean's area. And then that would allow the people in the dean's office to move into the main office space, and they would have that close proximity to the rest of student services, and it would accomplish that. It also would accomplish for the main office to have a model similar to Glenbrook South, where the main office would be then right off of the lobby as visitors come in. And so it works well for both departments. This is a project that we did put out to bid already, just with the timing of where we're at in the year. So our plan would be to bring the actual bid results to our next board meeting, so you can see what the actual costs are for this project. But it is a project that we're estimating to be close to $500,000.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, anything to add to that?
I just grateful for how quickly that Dr. Gravel and Dr. Patak put this package together and take advantage of this opportunity that we have. But opening.
Terrific. That's great. And just procedurally, this would come back on consent, and at the same time, you'd have these first bids. Is that the thought?
Yeah, so procedurally, we would go through it, have the approval for the bid specs, or we basically move forward within the existing budget in the existing fiscal year's budget, so we don't require the authorization. It's just kind of our normal practice. But with the delay in bringing this, we were planning to bring it before spring break, but we just had a few finishing touches to go through.
So before I open this to questions that anybody may have, are you just looking for the sense of the board? Is that what you're looking for tonight? Okay, great. Just want to make sure we knew it was procedure. So folks, I know everyone's heard this committee, Mr. Shine.
Just one real quick comment. I would suggest anybody who has time, go over to North and spend a few minutes with Ms. Bonner, and she'd walk you through, because it's a piece here, a piece there, a piece there, which all aggregates, these nice sketches. But I was unable to kind of put it together in my own mind until she walked through it. Not the intent and the purpose and why we should do it. I just couldn't kind of
Visualize it.
put
Yeah.
it after all these years. I didn't actually know that you could walk from the assistant principal through the back over to the college counseling. For whatever reason, in all these years, I have never done that. I always walk out into the hall, down the hall, and walk around.
You're like an obedient student. That's well done. Yeah.
Like the dog, you just keep kicking the thing. So anyway, that's all. Great project.
Any questions or comments here? Good. Okay, so I think you've got the sense of the board. And then you're gonna bring us back some the
All right.
bids you said on.
So we would bring the bids back to you at the next board meeting. so
Thank
can
you
see the
again for
actual
your,
cost.
all your,
Take the week off.
you found work, time to do this one on top of the energy one, so thank you. Appreciate it very much. Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
okay, excellent. So item 7 on our agenda is the summary of our meeting. And we have, we did not have any community visitors, but we did have board and superintendent reports about the strategic plan, the eclipse at Glenbrook South, though Mr. Bill, I'm assuming Glenbrook North may have looked at the eclipse too, maybe. They did, you see, and all sorts of other great reports we mentioned before with championships and working with consulates and life after college. Or life when the kids go to college. So thanks for all that. Consent agenda also we had, and then we had a presentation on the guaranteed energy savings contract, which with some adjustments to the memo will come back on the 29th for consent. And then finally, we had the Glenbrook North Student Support Reconfiguration Project. We gave the sense of the board to go forward. We'll see bids on the 29th as well. Item 8, possible topics for future board meetings. Please let Dr. Johnson know. Item 9, closed session. We do have closed session tonight to consider the collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, student disciplinary cases, and litigation when an action against, affecting, or on behalf of the particular public body has been filed and is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, or when the public body finds that an action is probable or imminent, in which case the basis for the finding shall be recorded and entered into the minutes of the closed meeting pursuant to sections 2C2, 9, 11 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, we're gonna go into close. Do people want a couple minutes? You want those to dive in? Okay, we'll take 5 minutes and then we'll jump right in.
And Mr. Doughty, we are back.
We're back in open session. Item 10, possible action regarding topics discussed in closed session. 10.1 is our student discipline. We'll entertain a motion based on our closed session. Mr. Shine.
Recommend that the Board of Education to expel student 0306-2024 through the end of the 2024-25 school year, with the ability to return on probation for the second semester of the 24-25 school year if certain conditions are met during the expulsion period as outlined in the agreement.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Doughty,
Yes.
Ms. Mullenbeck,
Yes.
Ms. Segwin,
Yes.
Mr. Shine,
Yes.
Dr. Steinberg.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Item 11, adjournment. Entertain a motion.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Carries
Thank you,
5-0.
everyone.